Welcome, Salesforce testers, to a Salesforce performance test framework known as LoadRunner TruClient. This workshop will demonstrate the ease of developing a script to test Salesforce connection, login, and logout. This solution uses GUI testing concepts. As I continue to look for Salesforce test solutions that support test automation, I am finding there is no shortage. This time, I am demonstrating how LoadRunner TruClient can easily record and play back a session with Salesforce. I am making some assumptions. I expect that you already know how to install the latest release of LoadRunner. The trial version is sufficient. There is also an associated tool from the vendor site called Network Virtualization, NV for short. When this is installed, it works with the LoadRunner software. Here is my plan for this tutorial session. The demo session will include launching VuGEN, the editor, selecting the TruClient option, recording connection, login, and logout processes of Salesforce, executing the script just as it is, reviewing the results that are included with the execution, and reviewing the Network Virtualization Insights report. I think that will be a very great help to your understanding of what capabilities you have with this tool selection. Now, one more communication before the demo. In the description section below is a link to my website and the article written related to this demo. I encourage you to read this article for more information. Let's begin the demonstration. Here we are at a launched window of VuGEN, and I'm showing you Virtual User Generator, what the version and build level is, version 2021 and build 371. Let's close that and begin the recording session. We click on File, Script New, or New Script and Solution. And here we have a pop-up window where we can select whatever protocol we're interested in. We're interested in the TruClient Web protocol. There are other TruClient options for mobile testing, but we're interested in web testing of Salesforce. So therefore, we use TruClient Web. And we'll notice the script name. Here it is. It has TruClient 3. It gave me that as a default. I happen to know there is none that exists with that name, so that's good. I don't have to change that, but if I need to change it to some other name, some other naming convention, that's fine. Click the Create, and that brings us to a window showing that TruClient and the action, and nothing is in the action other than the return statement. So we're ready to begin a record session. And what we do is we go to Record and select Develop Script. It's going to bring up a browser window as well as the TruClient session side by side. When that's ready, we can then go to this little red circle. Notice that we can record before selected, into selected, and after selected step. We're just going to let it go with the default for a brand new recording. Now, it's ready for us to provide a URL for Salesforce. I'm going to press the Enter key, and here we are. We are at the connection point for Salesforce where we can enter login credentials. You'll notice on the left, there's already one statement that has been generated, and that is to navigate to the Salesforce edition. Let's start with entering a username and password. Username, finish that. Enter the password. And then click the login button. Notice on the left of the screen that it has captured some of that information having to do with entering the login credentials. Now I'm clicking the login button, and it's captured that information. We now see we are in Salesforce. I'm going to remove that. And then I'm going to go straight to the View Profile icon, click on it so that I can log out. Click on the log out. And that's the extent of my script. I simply wanted to provide connection information, login information, and then log out information as a starting point. And that's a good way to test out the application that you're targeting for testing with a tool like TruClient. Now, we have saved the script, and we have now a view of the script, and you'll notice that it has up to 9 actual steps that it went through. Step 1 is the navigation or connection, and step 2 through 6, is that right? Yes. Step 2 through 6 has to do with login, and then steps 7 through 9 has to do with log out and closing the browser. Okay, it has started. We can see the output down here in this output box. It's now entering the user credentials. Sorry. Password has been entered. Login button has been pressed. And now we're moving on to the view profile and selecting the logout, and we are completed. The browser instance shut down unexpectedly, trying to resume browser instance. So the only error here is that I really don't need step 9. All right, here's a deviation from plan. Not only did we have an error with step 9, and then of course I got rid of step 9, but there was also step 7 that was causing failure. And I want to show you what that is about. First of all, here is a successful execution of that script. Notice we have only 8 steps, and as I mentioned, I want to show you something about step 7. But here is also 2 things that you need to see. One is the Insights report, and the second one is the runtime settings. Let's go to the runtime settings first. Over here where it says replay using recorded duration for steps. Whatever it recorded, by default, it is unchecked. When I had the problem with step 7, I believed it was related to this. So I checked it, reran it more than once, and it seemed to stop giving me the failure at step 7. And as again, I'm going to show you what that is about. So you should do this. If you encounter that kind of problem that I'm going to show you, then check this box and save that information. We close the settings. It will pop up a window. We say yes. Excuse me. And now what I want to do, I'm going to deviate again and show you the report on this successful run. And then I want to go back, rerun this again, see if we still are running successful, both in this view, and also you can go to the develop script view and run it where you actually see the display of the windows. So let's start with showing you this insights report. You should see that once, if you have network virtualization installed along with LoadRunner, you should see this on your screen when the test runs, even if it's not successful. All right, let's click on that so you can see what it showed you. So what it did is popped up a browser window, and it has a report that goes out under the results folder, and it's called NV report and embedded something. But it's by itself. It's that one HTML file. I'm going to expand this further to make it easier to see the output. And the first thing that pops up is the grade. There's an overall grade for this particular run. So it has to do with, it will be a letter grade of A through F. If it fails, if everything failed, then it's going to be an F grade. But otherwise, this has to do with performance and how this set of reports sees the results. And it's telling me that I got a B for this run. If I click on this, it can see you can go with, instead of mobile, it defaults to mobile desktop. I haven't seen anything change with that. Anyway, the next thing is, what does it see in terms of network time? It's saying that it spent 113.8 seconds in the network. That can be helpful in when you compare this to several runs. You may find something different going on, especially the time of day, what's going on in your network. All the other activities that are going on can impact what you see in terms of this network time for this Salesforce test. All right, on the right side, you're going to see, first of all, the default report, which is the recommendations report, and I'll go into that in more detail. I'm going to come back to that. I want to go down this particular path and show you report by report. All right, so the first report in this list, aside from this information, is what it calls the HTTP Waterfall report. So if I click on that, I'm going to see something really interesting. You'll see all of the events that were occurring in this process of connecting to Salesforce, logging into Salesforce, and then logging off of Salesforce. And you can see that this information here showing you the rendering, the loading of the DOM as well as of the page, and more detailed information, what page, what resource, if you will. And I'm not going into a complete training session on this, but basically you've got some really good information in terms of size and time that each of these components take, and did they run successfully or not, and so on. All right, so that's the HTTP waterfall report. Each HTTP request will show you information down here in detail. Then there's the resource analysis, and it indicates that there were 134 resources in use for this process where we're connected, logged in, and logged off. And you'll see the total size of the data that was passed in those processes, a breakdown of whether it was JSON or HTML, JavaScript, ping files, CSS, and what have you. That is a good breakdown as well. And you can see it in this graph, these two graphs with the image, code, app data, and other data. So that's all broken down into a circular graph that gives you input as to what was going on by resource. Then there's the error report. If there were any errors, it would tell you that. Then there's the endpoint latencies. Latency is always a good thing to know about concerning the network side of things. And as I mentioned in my article, there are basically two things that we're looking at from a performance test standpoint at the customer site. You're mostly looking at what is happening on the client machine in terms of rendering the pages, and what is happening in the network in terms of getting to the Salesforce site and back from the Salesforce site after bringing data regarding your application. And so here you can see all the URLs involved in the process. You can see the IP addresses, and you can determine how much time is spent in dialogue with each one of those pairs. And there's more information as well. I'm going to move on. As I said, I'm not doing a training session here. And here's another waterfall report, this one called the general, and that's going to be more of the same, the endpoint latency, so you can see more information and see it by size of information as well as time. Moving on, the summaries. The summaries is a good one for seeing the breakdown that you typically might see in Chrome browsers, where when you look at the developer tool called Lighthouse, you'll see some of this same type of information. The client data, connection data, transmission data, and response weights. So how much time was spent in each based on HTTP requests and SSL requests. And you can see a lot of throughput data, over 3 million bytes of data, and you can see the packet overhead information, total packets, and so on. You can scroll and see further information, breakdowns here. So this is very useful information in terms of looking at what is going on with performance and what can we do to follow up and possibly do some tuning. Next report, that's the last one. That's the one you see by default. It shows you the recommendations. So what does this set of tools or reports is trying to communicate to you? And there's a set, basically a total report here that you can page through and look at, and everything at the bottom that's checked, you can see that it did check on those things and found that there were no violations whatsoever. But as you proceed to the top of the report, you have your A's, which it's saying, hey, there is a violation or a couple of violations, but that's not a big deal. That's okay. Whereas it starts to degrade with the B, the C, the E, and finally the F's. So we have these that are probably things that could be looked into. Granted, you may have to work with the Salesforce vendor to look into those things, to challenge those things, to make sure that there might be some way to improve upon those violations that occurred. Things like avoiding the URL redirects, or avoiding the caching, leveraging the caching, and so on. So hopefully, without doing a thorough training session on this, that this is helpful information to you, and that you might find this very useful in some level of performance testing. Okay, I promised to run the test in two different windows. First, this window here that we're looking at. I'm going to delete the replay summary, get that out of the way. Now we're looking at the script again with the 8 steps, and I'm going to click on this little arrow, which will replay this script in this window. We'll see the output down at the bottom in that window as it's progressing, and then finally we'll see results. Let's see if we get a good run for this script again. And also notice at the bottom, when you start seeing the output displays, that when it gets if it gets past step 7, then chances are it's going to complete step 8 without error. Let's see what happens. We're at step 2. Notice there's pairs. Each step, we've got a start statement and a completion statement to let you know whether it's passed, failed. Doing the login now. We're at step 7. Notice that it did complete step 7, so that's the one that could fail if the timing is incorrect. Momentarily, we should see step 8. Then I want to go over to the other view so that we can see what it is about step 7 that might be a challenge. And that challenge I've noticed with other scripting tools as well. All right, here's 8. It completed. Momentarily, we'll see the summary, and that's where we looked at the insights report. It prepares that. It tells you it's creating it, and momentarily we'll see that it's ready for use again. We're not going to go back and look at that. There we go. Now it says open NV Insights report. We're not going to do that. I already showed you that. We've already gone to the runtime setting. I showed you the checkbox that needs to be checked in order to help get past that step 7 problem. So now let's go to the other view, which is where we actually can do further development to the script, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to run it where we can see the browser information that occurs on each step and what's happening. Okay, so here we can execute the script from this point. If we needed to make any further changes, we could do that here. I'm going to start the replay now. So here we get to see on the right panel what's happening, what we're connecting now, and we're about ready to start entering the user credential. There we go. And Entering the password now. And we're clicking on the login button. Now, you see that screen that's asking to either save or never save the user credentials? That is in the way of the pop-up for the view profile. So what happens is it ends up coming up behind the screen. But I physically moved that out of the way so I could see it when I recorded the script. And I suggest that you do a close of that window rather than move it. Clicking on that X box to get it out of the way. Now we're at step 8. It's taking a little time just like we saw before, but it should process successfully. So it's successfully processed. We're done. It's now back to the connect screen, and we're going to stop at this point. I really thank you for your time. I'm not going to bore you with any other information at this time. You can just click that red X box, and now we're back at the other view, and we still have that report displaying. We could still go in and look at the report and so on. But I'm done for now. I thank you.